You have proclaimed this a slow news
Except for I
week.
just saw something. Did you see this? The Tampa Bay Devil Rays
Wait, I'm sorry. What sport?
have petitioned and received the Major League Baseball's permission to explore becoming a 2-city team.
Wow.
Tampa Bay and Montreal.
Wow.
This isn't like the,
They're not. Those are not
New
even.
Orleans Hornets
How
being
far
like
is that flight?
New Orleans and like Oklahoma City, but this is like, Montreal to Tampa Bay. We're talking about
Like 5-6 hours.
It's 5 hours.
Yeah, I mean that's no joke.
So but who would want to play there then? You'd need to have a residence in both areas.
I mean,
Who would want to play in Tampa to begin
So I'm
with,
guessing they'd just be in a hotel. Like their primary residence would still be Tampa Bay, and
this doesn't seem like it would be that cost effective.
All right, which NFL team is the best candidate for a dual residency, and where should they go?
I mean, I think Buffalo, the Buffalo Bills should beat the Toronto Bills.
Oh, you like the candidate idea?
I do.
Because I'm not.
I mean, I think we should make it slow because the United States is kind of on the right. So we should just slowly. So the Vikings should move to Winnipeg. I
think Canada's fine, but I don't think it's nearly as exciting as doing, as having the Chargers or the Raiders be half in Vegas, half in LA, half in Mexico. That'd be awesome.
So how many halves is that?
So it'd be fair. What?
How many halves was that?
It's one half.
Oh, okay. So if they were both half in, so they were
either any of those teams.
Oh, sure.
Are a good candidate for it. I think the Chargers are the best candidate. Here's why: they have no home field advantage. They haven't had a home field advantage in forever, right? So all of a sudden you take them to Mexico, and now they've got this advantage because theoretically they get used to playing it now.
So what if we did this where
we're not off track? This is exactly what we plan to do.
What if we okay, the Seattle Seahawks should go to play in Vancouver. The Minnesota Vikings.
Seattle, I feel like the reason Tampa Bay is making this move is that their home fans kind of
stink.
It's not great.
Yeah.
Seattle doesn't need to go anywhere.
No, I'm saying if you I'm changing the topic just a tad to if
everyone moves.
If the U.S. teams were to move to different countries, what would be the most natural? So it'd be Buffalo would move to Toronto, Minnesota would move to Montreal, Minnesota would move to Winnipeg, Detroit would move to Windsor. Yeah, we could probably do a pretty good
You're destroying the league. Where do all the teams in the South go? The ocean.
Well, the Cuba Dolphins. Yeah.
Which team is playing in
the
middle of the ocean on a ship?
The Juarez.
The Bucks are just moving to a pirate ship, and they're going to play. That'd be sweet, actually. You know, they have college basketball games on a ship. That'd be awesome. All right. The other news here is that Matthew Stafford played with a broken back, apparently. So that's true grit.
He was carrying Matt Patricia, and it just gave out.
You hate to see it. I mean, that explains why their rushing offense got so much better, yet their overall offense really struggled. Now it makes all the sense in the world. John Fox thought the Bears had the worst offseason in the NFL.
It makes me kind of conflicted because obviously we're pro Bears under, but then also John Fox is kind of the worst. So
that's a bad take. How could they have the worst offseason?
Well, they didn't have any draft picks. And then they trade up for Montgomery too, so they kind of chased a little.
So maybe John Fox is.
They lost Adrian Amos, and I gotta imagine
lost Bryce Callahan.
Clinton Dix is not a John Fox kind of player.
True.
Yeah,
I guess you could make the claim that it's not the.
They did have a great offseason.
The best.
They didn't upgrade a quarterback.
Losing those two. No, he's getting better, so they did upgrade. The mean tweets have some good Bears content here. Here's the one that I thought was great. Jack Wright said, "Oh, good. Timon and Pumbaa got a hostage."
Referring to Kevin.
So Kevin will like that because he was hoping that he'd get some hate from the loving fans out there, and he did.
Adam H., who, interestingly, I replied to this because
that's what you do.
That's what one does. And eventually this like comment turned into, yeah, but if the Bears weren't quite as good, Trubisky's yards per attempt and completion percentage would be somehow better. And so we're talking to a really, really astute football fan here, but they said they pick Trubes. Got a great vibe with him, calls him Trube. Second worst game to watch against a Belichick defense notoriously hard for young quarterbacks, ... Watch Lions at Bears, Bears at 49ers, and Bears at Vikings, then talk about how Trubisky did in those games. And I kind of looked. Okay, so first off, the Lions suck. So good. Trubisky had a great game against the Lions. But Trubisky threw for 163 yards in the Week 17 game against the Vikings with an 86 rating. So I don't know if I'd point that game out. And then, of course, the Bears scored a whopping 14 points against the 49ers in the other game he refers to. So, I mean, I guess 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but, like, he's only getting 1 out of 3 here.
It's not great. Although if you play baseball in 2 states or 2 countries, that's great. 1 out of 3.
Do they start to, like, do they change all the media guides when they move to Montreal? Everything's in, like, the metric system? Like, I'm, like, 2 meters tall.
I don't know, man. You are talking to the wrong person. I cannot watch baseball until the Rays become the Montreal Rays, until July. Until Joe Buck starts opining beautifully over the World Series.
This one I found pretty funny.
And only then I only watch it if it's like the only thing on.
This one I found funny from Chronos Safly. Man, is the dude on the right, referring to George, a Packer fan. Why do I bother watching PFF videos? Question mark.
How'd he know? Huge Packer fan here.
Well, given how overweight you are.
Born and bred.
And
True.
how good your football takes are.
Point. Look, I was having a bad day. I may have had some ice cream the night before.
That's like reminds me of that Onion article that said like when Aaron Rodgers like sat out a week in Green Bay and like his face got all like fat and you would struggle to fit in Wisconsin, I feel.
I was in LA this weekend and I went to get ice cream with my sisters. And of course they, like, I'll have a half scoop of this and, whatever.
You hate to see it.
So I get up there and I don't eat ice cream a lot, but when I do, I eat it all. So I got a waffle cone with 3 scoops on it. The lady kind of looks at me. She's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. And yes, like they all need to be full scoops. So it takes her like 5 minutes. She gets it together. It's a mound of ice cream. Everyone's like, who's the fat ass that's going to have this? Comes over to me, hands it to me, and goes, good luck. I just looked at her and I was like, I don't need luck here. You kidding me? This thing's gone in 2 minutes. So that explains why I looked so hefty and why I looked like a Packers fan. I'm not a Packers fan. I'm a Niners fan. You should know this. All right, let's go into the game reviews. These were fun. So we watched Kansas City at New England Week 6. That was a Sunday night game. Probably the best Sunday night game of the year. I don't think that's a stretch. There were some other good ones, but that would be certainly in the top 3 in my opinion. And then New England at Kansas City in the conference championship game in what was a much colder setting. Although Kansas City at New England actually wasn't super warm. So both very good games. Both were 3.5, 3-point spread. A lot of points being scored. And to me, both games were sort of similar.
That James White just dominated both games? Yeah.
I don't know. Were you surprised by how similar the games felt?
So in a sense, they ended up the same, more or less. But the first game was more fast-paced.
True.
So we had the over in the first game, and it wasn't really in doubt. The game was basically a track meet from the start. And,
Patriots got out ahead 14-0.
Patriots, well, in the AFC title game, the Patriots only got out ahead 7-0, right. And we're going to go into the half up 7-0. But then
that was in the championship. Yeah,
and then James White had like a great series, and it capped off by a Dorsett touchdown at the end of the half. Which really, to me, if you're thinking about what was the one thing that kept the Chiefs from the Super Bowl, is that touchdown at the end of the first half, in my opinion, because Kansas City had like weather the storm in the Reggie Ragland interception in the end zone. They held New England at least on one series, whereas in the game at Foxborough in Week 6, the Patriots drove all the way down to the Chiefs territory, missed a 4th down, right? They drive all the way down into Chiefs territory, kick a field goal, right? They get a touchdown after the Hightower interception, and like they basically scored on every single possession except for the times that they killed themselves, which was the one time Brady like held the ball for 17 seconds and finally allowed Breland Speaks to get a sack on him. And I believe like there was an Edelman drop that led to the field goal that put them up only 7 before the Tyreek Hill touchdown. So like in that game, I think that the Patriots really beat themselves as the only defense, whereas I think in the AFC Championship game, the Chiefs did some things defensively that stopped the Patriots, but ultimately the results were the same.
Yeah, so going back to week 6, in watching this game, the question mark was how will Pat Mahomes fare against Bill Belichick, known for completely destroying young quarterbacks. It's just what he does. First half, it feels like, as a person that roots for the Chiefs and as a Pat Mahomes fan, did you feel that way? Were you nervous after that first half or after that first, it was 17-6 at one point. There were 2 to 3 really bad overthrows in that first 3 drives, I guess. He had the Kelsey, he had Hunt, and I think he had Hill too.
Well, I mean, we have to go back to what we thought about the Patriots at the time. So at week 6, as week 6 was happening,
right, 3-2.
They were 3-2. They had bad losses against the Jaguars and a bad loss against the Lions. They were undefeated at home during the season, but there was really no reason to. They had kind of a sluggish win against Houston. They had they were not an impressive team. Right. So when I saw Mahomes missed Kelsey on a big play, there was an interception that he had at the end of the half that they were going in trying to tie the score, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't see those as like, oh my gosh, this team's so good, and if you miss opportunities against them, you're screwed. I saw it as, the Chiefs are doing everything they can. They're just messing this game up, right?
Yeah.
So, whereas in the AFC Championship game, I very much thought that. I very much thought when the Dorsett touchdown happened, I thought, oh my gosh, this game's over. The Patriots are going to stomp on their head. When the Chiefs drove all the way down and got sacked out of field goal range in the first half, I thought the same thing. In the Sunday night game, I'm just, we had never seen Mahomes have to come from behind that much. And so it was sort of this new experience for Chiefs fans, I thought, at the time.
Interesting. I had the exact opposite reaction. So watching game 6, or the game in week 6, I remember watching it live being terrified that, oh no, we've seen a guy get out to a hot start. He seems like a great quarterback, and now the wheels are starting to come off, and maybe, the hype is not going to be borne out. And then when the championship game came around, it was like, I'm not worried about this at all. In fact, in my notes, going back over it, I believe towards the start of the second quarter, it's 7-0 New England, and they have an opportunity to kind of press their advantage. They have a 4th and 1 at the 41, and they punt.
I know.
And it was just a disaster. And the funny thing about it was that, so I know I'm jumping the gun here to the championship game, but New England is up 7-0. Kansas City on their second drive
got a first down,
has a 4th and a half yard at the 30, and decides to punt. And to me, that was where I started to get nervous, because Andy Reid has a penchant for drawing up beautiful plays and then making decisions that trump them. And
especially you're playing with house's money,
right? You're playing with the defense that literally couldn't stop anybody. The decision to punt there was nonsensical to me. Of course, Belichick returns the favor in a much more obvious situation. Yeah. And my note was the Patriots should be up 21-0 here. So to me in that game, I was not worried at all, because I thought Kansas City had sort of dodged a bullet. I knew Mahomes could come back.
Yeah.
But I want to get back to week 6 here. So the things that really stuck out to me watching this game were the Patriots don't have a great pass rush, but it was very noticeable in this game, and then was something I was looking for in the next game, how the blitz impacted Mahomes. And it wasn't always an all-out blitz. Sometimes it was a guy sort of just reading his keys and making a smart decision when a back was staying in. But the pocket was continually getting pressed. Mahomes just did not look comfortable during that game, and it was really shocking, because overall in those 2 games, against the blitz, Kansas City was 5.9 yards per play. New England 10.8, and the Patriots blitzed twice as often. So it really worked, and generally the blitz is something that helps teams, it helps quarterbacks, and in those games it did not.
If you can pick it up, right? And that was the thing that we saw, later on in the season, like for example against Baltimore, against LA, I believe, like Mahomes did a very good job of avoiding pressure and eventually making throws. He was the highest graded quarterback under pressure, but in this particular game and in the AFC title game in the first half, it did really knock him off of his spot. And that, I thought it was. I'm with you. I thought, when you look at this game, when Andy Reid got to set his feet as a play caller, I mean, there was the screen pass to Kareem Hunt early in the first half, early in the second half when he got Hunt on that same basic play that Alex Smith hit Hunt on in week 1 of 2017. Like there were all, and then of course in the AFC title game, Damian Williams scored 3 touchdowns, looked like a superstar based on all these Andy Reid plays. I thought when Mahomes and Reed were allowed to set their feet, the Patriots had no answer personnel-wise. So it was good for the Patriots to sort of get Mahomes off of his spot in the first half of both of these games, because ultimately the Patriots needed every one of, the fact that I believe Chiefs had 9 points in the first half of both games. They needed every bit of those, not 9 points.
Well, that's why going into the championship game, I thought the Chiefs have this. All they have to do is avoid this catastrophe of a first half. Not only did Andy Reid decided then not to go for a 4th and 6 in the second quarter of week 6 at the goal line, down 17-9. Of course, the half ends, I think it was 24-9 on an interception or something like that to end the half. And those things, the overthrows by Mahomes. There was, of course, the Edelman play where he's going in, he's got a step, his glove comes off, so he pulls the glove back on before he scores, which, Antonio Cromartie could obviously learn a thing or two about that from our good man Edelman. But like those types of plays where you sort of expect things to bounce the other way, all the bounces went New England's way in that game, and then they have the firepower. They had so many drives where it was 2 plays, and you're like, wow. That's how Kansas City got back into both of these games, is they had those just tremendous long plays.
Well, and I wonder how this favors for them in the future, because historically we've seen offenses like this. Like take the 98 Vikings when they first got Moss and Cunningham and Carter and all that kind of stuff, and they were like quick strike video game type offenses. In subsequent seasons, you had teams literally change their coverages for Moss, and when you had to cross the street 10 times on the way to the end zone, you got hit by a car, right? So the question is when the Chiefs don't have this firepower of being able to score so quickly, will that be an adjustment for them in 2019? Because, we saw it a little bit. I mean, the Ravens, for example, in that game at Arrowhead made them do that, right? To some degree, like the Colts in the playoffs made them do that. And in the AFC title game, they weren't like this deep, quick strike offense. They were more of this down the field, Sammy Watkins using some of the complementary pieces. But that is, as a Chiefs fan, that's something I worry about, because, it's easy to score quickly when you have that firepower, but when another team makes you be patient up and down the field, it's not quite as simple.
Well, and I think that's worth talking about. In these 2 games, there were 2 players who were over 10 yards per target, Gronk and Tyreek Hill, and both had 16 targets, and Tyreek Hill was about a yard clear of Gronk. I mean, it's obvious that he creates, even when he's not targeted, it's obvious what he does. But just having a guy that you're so worried about every time you throw the ball his way, it's basically a first down. Like that's going to cause you to overcompensate. And we've seen, it's so interesting, we've seen New England do exactly this. In fact, this series is a good example. I thought Josh Gordon, even though he was not on the same page as Tom Brady in those games, really was an advantage for them. And it was noticeable in the second game. They did not have nearly as good of a deep threat. They adjusted and were able to, and I'll talk about this in a second here, with Julian Edelman in motion. They had picked up on this in week 6 and just torched the Chiefs. But it will be very interesting to see if they can do that.
Yeah, Hill and Kelsey combined for just 75 receiving yards in the second game, and the Chiefs were able to counter off of that. That was
Damian Williams, generational talent.
Well, and Watkins had 4 catches for 114 yards, and
By the way, CBS, when Williams scored, they put up Damian Williams, but they abbreviated his first name DAM, so it just said Damn Williams.
Yeah,
well, I couldn't agree more.
Because I believe the Chiefs have Darrell Williams as a running back as well, so it shows the interchangeability of that position. You make a great point about the way in which New England went about their business in Game 6 versus the AFC title game. Michel 29 carries, right? Like they weren't even actually that efficient running the football. Both Michel and Burkhead and James White were all under 4 yards a carry themselves in this game, but it was sort of that efficiency, especially James White on third downs, and then sort of the underneath stuff to Edelman. Gronk wasn't that big of a factor down the field in the first game. He had to be in the second game on Barry, for example, in that last drive because they missed Gordon. Gordon, it wasn't necessarily the catches he made, but he drew a pass interference penalty on Steven Nelson in the end zone that caused a touchdown. He was just an advantage player for New England that they really did miss in the AFC Championship game.
In that championship game, to me, it was New England almost seemed to be trying to use all 3 downs. It was almost as if first and second down were an experiment. Yeah. They knew they could convert at a high enough rate, or they felt they could convert at a high enough rate on third down. They were just sort of toying with them, wanted to make sure that Kansas City's defense got tired. And that's not usually something you can rely on, but New England converted 78% of 3rd and 5+.
Yeah.
By far the highest of any game that season. I mean, it was an absolute. They averaged almost 13 yards per play on 3rd and 5+. Kansas City was -4.
Well, but that makes you know that when they went into this game, they felt that they were the underdog.
Yeah.
If you you look at how people talk about the run game and how people talk about how to play when you're an underdog and disadvantaged. They say you should shorten the game. You should do all these things. And if you're not sharp, what that means is run on first down, run on second down, and take your chances. But in New England's case, they understand that okay, let's use all 3 downs because we know that in week 6 we scored early and we scored often, and Kansas City just came back over the top and scored early and scored often. We almost lost, right? So in the AFC Championship game, they're like, okay, the first drive for them took all the way until 6:55 in the first quarter. You have the best player in the NFL on the other side of the field, and he doesn't even get to play in the first half of the first quarter. That's smart, right? And a lot of it was that they were efficient in the run game early. But really what it was waiting until third down, making short throws, making, shortening the game by extending time of possession for them, but in their own Patriots way.
Very patriotic of them. The two kind of things that schematically stuck out to me was their usage of Edelman in motion in this game and how effective they were. They would sort of motion him in basically to a tight bunch or into the slot in a tight bunch. And so I went back and looked in week 6. It turns out they did that as well. When Edelman was in motion over the course of these 2 games, they averaged 11 yards per play, which is just ridiculous. And it turns out they actually used him in motion more in week 6. So they certainly learned from that game. They took advantage of all of the little things, right? They were efficient when they blitzed, right? They were able to hold Kansas City back. They forced Mahomes to do things that he normally doesn't do. Everyone likes to talk about Mahomes being this, he makes these plays out of structure. But really the reason that this offense was so great is that within structure, they were the best, right? Andy Reid's scheme was so good, and Mahomes could execute it at a level that few in the game, regardless of who their coach is, could get to. And to me, the way that you think about this is, okay, when you drop back, your first look is going to be open, and it's going to be a big gain, right? That's how you sort of identify a great scheme. Obviously, there are more ways, but that to me is a linchpin. On first look throws against the Patriots, 30% of Mahomes' throws were uncatchable. Over double his rate during the rest of against every other opponent. So New England, to me, exemplified why they are sort of the MJ Bulls of this current sort of iteration of the NFL. They're always prepared. They never seem to let drama or whatever's happening outside get to them. They kind of they exemplify the we're not going to say anything, we're just going to play mentality, and I thought that showed in both of these games.
They make you play left-handed, right? And that's of course, there could have been a number of reasons. Mahomes could have been off, but it also could have been good coverage. We know that good coverage affects a quarterback's accuracy, all that kind of stuff. But again, it does. And to the Chiefs' credit, I hate we can continue to say this, but they had the lead in the fourth quarter, and we're ready. We're an offside penalty away. There were 10 different things away from making the Super Bowl, despite the Patriots, I think, playing an extremely good game in beating them.
The luck goes both ways, though. I mean, Mahomes tried to throw a game-ending interception as well. It got dropped. So I think we can throw some of those plays out. I thought of this, though. So New England, their style is, okay, we're going to do things that are simple yet sort of you're not prepared for, right? Like Cordero Patterson playing running back. It's like these little things that are simple, but they just make the difference because you do them in all these different places. Whereas Kansas City is like, we're a Ferrari. We've got the best horses in all facets, and we're just going to run this exotic stuff that is going to make you spin in circles and hit these big plays. To me, I think the Patriots way is more sustainable, but maybe harder. Like, it's more work to make sure that keeps working. I don't know. What do you think of that?
The Patriots grew up with a quarterback that's far less talented than Mahomes. So they had to learn how to. They had to sort of learn how to win this way, and then
the Chiefs had Alex Smith, so
and then that's right, and that's why we saw such efficiency gains. I mean, it's not dissimilar from when the Patriots win in 2006, and then they got Moss in 2007, and all of a sudden, holy shit, this team's really good. It's the same thing. They had to learn with Alex Smith. They get Mahomes, and then everything turns up. It's strange because when I'll talk to other friends who are Chiefs fans, and every time they would lose a game like this, I would say this is a good sign. They've lost a game where they made the mistake that they can't make, right? Like in the New England game, they fell behind and turned the ball over too much, and they couldn't get any pressure on Brady, right? In the LA Rams game, it was they turned the ball over too much, and they got in a track meet where their defense isn't good enough to do that. In the so every single game, I'm like, okay, they're learning from these close losses, and then ultimately, they did not win the AFC Championship game. But whereas the Patriots sort of have all those scars in their back pocket, they have losing to the Colts in 2005, they have getting blown out by the Ravens in 2009, they have all these losing to the freaking Eli Manning twice, right? So losing to Nick Foles, they have all these scars, and they sort of are just battle tested in that way.
Do you like my Patriots or MJ's Bulls, and then the Chiefs or maybe the Showtime Lakers analogy?
I'm not that familiar with the Showtime Lakers. I would hope that eventually they would become it's hard to say.
I mean, I would sort of, so I could also compare them to a current team that maybe not the, I wouldn't go with the Warriors. I would say the Suns, Steve Nash Suns.
That's a pretty good one. I just hope that they end up winning a title.
Well, sure, but they haven't won one yet. But Nash was a generational passer. Amari Stoudemire, Sean Marion, these were guys that they could do things no one else could do, and they took advantage of it.
Sean Marion, great free throw shooter.
His 3-point shot was so disgusting. All right.
So here's a question.
Yeah.
Just to finish this off. So going into 2019. I mean, are we to the point Patriots, Chiefs, Colts, probably the three most likely teams to win the AFC given, the current betting markets, but also just kind of math. I mean, what do we need to see for the Chiefs to be unequivocally more favored to win the AFC than New England? I mean, are we ever going to know that until New England's effectively eliminated?
That's a great question, and I would point to coverage. I have zero faith in Kansas City's defense to ever elevate itself above average, whereas I have great faith in Belichick to create an above-average defense by the time it matters. I would say that I would actually put the Chargers in there too. I know it's tough because they're in the same, but I think their defense may be uniquely. Obviously they weren't able to do it against New England, but I think they might be uniquely capable of defeating some of these high-powered or slowing some of these.
They beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead on the third to last week of the year.
They have some tremendous players in coverage and pass rush, and they have a really good offense too. So I would definitely keep them in there. I mean, I think you just got to beat them.
All right. I mean,
it's that simple. But you just got to pull one of these out, and that's a super non-mathy way to talk about it. But like, there's a mental edge that you've got to cross, and they haven't crossed it yet.
So what if the Chiefs play
mental line?
What if the Chiefs play almost perfect football and they go 14-2 during the season, and the New England does the exact same thing they did last year, which is kind of dick around all season, finish 11-5, win the AFC East by 7 games, and get the 2 seed. Like, is there anything the Chiefs can do in the regular season relative to New England that would make you not bet on New England plus 600 going into the playoffs to win the Super Bowl?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if they go 14-2 and the Patriots are 9-7 and beleaguered and dying, sure.
Yeah, sure. But you know what I'm saying? It's so hard because, granted, the Chiefs struggled in losses to Seattle, and
I would not count your chickens before they're hatched. The Tyreek Hill thing, what he allows this team to do is real, and I don't know what the future holds for them.
It's all about it's all about.
I mean, it's a bad situation there. But, we'll see. So we'll figure out a game for next week. I don't think we need to figure it out right this very moment.
Moo had a good suggestion.
What was his?
Tampa Bay, Cleveland.
We're going to alienate like 90% of the population.
But Jameis is a good talking point.
90% of 10 is 9.
By the way, if you haven't read Peter King's Football Morning in America column, we were prominently, in that, as PFF was sort of the...
We wrote it. Yeah. So, yes, prominently featured.
The two of us were prominently, we had prominent roles in that. And then,
that's a good point.
And so in there was some Tampa Bay Buccaneers love.
Cleveland, Tampa Bay.
And Cleveland's a team that many people are interested in. So I watched a couple Tampa Bay games this week just to prepare for a radio hit. Jameis Winston is an interesting cat. Let's just put it that way. So
I won't say anything. You really set me up there. Interesting cat.
Just eat the W's and get it done.
An interesting cat. I'm not going to say it. I don't want you to have to cut this out.
His goods are so good, though.
Stop. All right, let's move on to the Tennessee Titans. Wow, when you go from Patriots, Chiefs to Titans, you really feel the drop-off there. The Titans last year, 9-7. It was a horrific year with respect to just watching the team play, right? Mariota was hurt. Blaine Gabbert was Blaine Gabbert. And a team that I think for the past couple of seasons has been sort of a Cinderella favorite. Maybe not favorite, but you always hear at least a couple people go, you should look out for the Titans. They've got this young quarterback. They've got this young defense. They had this new coach. He's from New England, all these different things.
Right. When they went from Mike Mularkey's exotic smash mouth to LaFleur, people were pretty excited about it.
Exotic smash mouth. They ended up going, though, 9-7 last year, although it feels sort of fluky here. They had a win with Blaine Gabbert against teams that they have no reason beating.
Actually, Blaine Gabbert led them to a win against Washington.
Led.
Houston.
Yes.
We were 4-3 taking Tennessee games. We took both their games against Houston, went 1-1 in those. They shut out the Giants on the road. We had them at +2. We faded them against LAC in London that game was not covered on a last-second touchdown by Mariota, but then the missed 2-pointer, so that was a sort of a sucky one. We liked them against Dallas on Monday Night Football. That was a good. That was Dallas's last loss before they went on their stretch. So, they got off to a 3-1 start. They struggled for a little bit. Then they dump trucked the Patriots at home by 3 touchdowns. And then after that, it was kind of a yo-yoing affair for them. Probably their season highlight was winning Thursday Night Football against Jacksonville, where Derrick Henry literally, He
just went off.
Yeah, he went all like beast mode on everybody. That being said, not a terribly bad roster, right? You took get their most valuable players. Corey Davis is a draft pick from a couple years ago. He's solid. Kevin Byard's a good safety. Jayon Brown, Jarrell Casey, Adoree Jackson, another first-round draft pick. So they haven't exactly missed on a lot of these, top-end players. The Malcolm Butlers, Logan Ryans have been sort of usable in the secondary for them as free agents. But ultimately, it's hinged upon the fact that Mariota has never been able to stay healthy and never been able to get into a rhythm there. He was worth about one WAR a season ago, despite missing all those games. So he's clearly not bad, but he's not getting a whole lot done. One thing that I really like for them, actually after going back and watching some Tampa Bay games, is the Adam Humphries signing is not trivial at all. He was worth about a half a win last season for Tampa Bay, despite a passing offense that had a lot of value with Godwin, Jackson, Evans in it. Humphries demanded targets because he was open. Jameis hit him a fair amount. I think if Mariota can stay healthy, that's a pretty effective passing offense. And you look at, Humphries and Davis, and I believe Delaney Walker's coming back from an injury. Like, they could actually have some success there. Given LaFleur leaves, but
AJ Brown is a guy that was more productive than DK Metcalf in college.
Second-round
He's
pick.
A guy that played well both in the slot and the outside. Having guys that can do that is really valuable. I think it comes down to, are they able to take advantage of the advantages that they do have? Right, Mariota's a mobile guy. I think they need to find a way to leverage that. He's a guy that, I don't know if this is the great comparison, but the way that like Deshaun Watson, he's not the most accurate guy, but God, he makes a lot of big plays. And one of the ways he's able to do that is he stresses the defense in so many ways. And I just think they've got to leverage that with Mariota, or else they're never going to be an above average offense. Now, granted, they were basically an average offense last year if you take out David Blaine Gabbert. And all of the wizardry that he provided. And so can you squeak into the top 10? It'll take the right side of variance, right? You'll need those receivers to actually become playmakers. You'll need some of those guys in coverage like Adoree Jackson, who has been really hit or miss. T.Y. Hilton just absolutely ate his lunch multiple times last season.
But they got Amani Hooker in the draft, a guy from Iowa that we really liked, Nate Davis. So on the offensive side of the ball, right, Nate Davis is a guard from Charlotte, and they got Roger Saffold, so they're trying to solidify those two guard positions, although Davis could play tackle. So there's some benefit there. They got Ryan Tannehill to back up Mariota, which Tannehill was awful a season ago in Miami, but he's a better backup than Blaine Gabbert.
True.
Obviously with the Humphries signing, and so I do think they got a little bit better. The Jeffrey Simmons draft pick's a tough one to stomach because he's not going to be able to play this year, but generally a pretty good pick from our opinion. So they did get a little bit better.
Yeah, I know a lot of people like that pick. I don't understand picking a guy that's not going to play for you in the first season.
And so and this drags me all the way down to this question. I'm okay with the idea that the Tennessee Titans got better. The question becomes, did they keep pace in the AFC South? Because in my opinion, I think Indianapolis is trying to lap everybody. I think Houston is moving in the right direction. Both from a personnel standpoint, but also just the fact that they have a young quarterback who's better already than Mariota is. And then Jacksonville was in the AFC title game 2 years ago and have kind of gotten rid of some of the bad things that have been.
Don't talk about Blake behind his back like that.
Nathaniel Hackett too, although John DeFilippo is his replacement. But so Tennessee could do all these things right and still finish fourth in the AFC South, in my opinion. And I don't see it as that rare of an occurrence.
Your love for Nick Foles is, I don't know if it's hate for Kirk Cousins or love for Nick Foles, but there's something
that he's better.
Yeah. It's really something. You brought that up, by the way. You threw that in my face in the gym, which is not fair because that's just a
people like that come up to us
take.
At the gym and be like, "Do you work at PFF?"
Flaming,
because we just
blowing my story now.
No,
it's like we'll get to that a little later. Your take. Don't try to dump water on your fiery take that Nick Foles is better than Kirk Cousins. It's amazing.
No. It's a strange topic. And by the way, if you want to go to profootballfocus.com, we have an article about Kirk Cousins today. It's strange. We talked about this with the Vikings last week. I think Kirk is better at more things than Nick Foles. But I think the things that Nick Foles is good at could win you a championship. It's strange, but like I think Kirk's 90% of Kirk's feature space is better than Nick's, but the parts that Nick's are good at like can win you a title, whereas I can just never see the cards in a Kirk Cousins deck. That's the difference. All right. Same thing with Keenum too. I think Kirk's a better quarterback than Keenum, but Keenum is capable of doing things that Kirk's not capable of.
I don't actually disagree with that. What I really took umbrage with was the whole, if I had to get lunch with one of them, like I'd choose Nick Foles every time. I think that's an egregious
Are you
take.
kidding? Kirk. Okay, I'm fully.
I would choose, for what it's worth, I think I would choose Nick Foles, but I don't think it's as different of a situation.
I think the gap
You're probably eating different food. Like, so after, I don't know what Nick Foles' diet is, but like at least you can trust that Kirk Cousins is going to put you in a food coma.
Nick Foles would have gone to Manny's in Minneapolis as opposed to like the newest vegan place.
Well, I've heard bad things about Manny's, so.
Well, you can take that up with the Minnesota people. But my thing is I
have like multiple.
There's no way
Manny's isn't even close to the first place I would go in Minnesota.
If I had the opportunity to eat dinner with Kirk Cousins or Nick Foles 10 times, it would be Foles 10 times. No matter what mood I was in. If I was in this lame ass mood, take. I would have dinner with Nick just to make me less lame.
It all stems from you being mad that Cousins didn't go to a steakhouse that has had its time passed over in Minneapolis.
My concerns with Kirk as a person are not based upon one anecdote.
As a mathematician, you should be more even-handed.
Okay, but I will come back and say my issues with Kirk as a person have nothing to do with one data point.
That's true. All right, this one off the rails quickly. Over-under for the Tennessee Titans set at 8.5. Not surprisingly, the over is plus money and the under is minus 140. You have to pick right now. With those odds in mind, would you still be going under?
I think it's more of a no bet at this point. I think
but that's not an option for you.
You've
got to choose over or under.
We printed the under a few weeks ago. Actually, some things have changed, in terms of like, the way in which we like the coaching aspect of it, right? Because the new offensive coordinator and everything. But given the way that it's currently constructed, I would clearly go under here. I think we get an under on 60, almost 64% of the time. So that's still worth laying 140 for.
Yes, I am there with you. Mariota's a guy that's in the middle. He's a cluster 3, cluster 4 guy. He's in the middle of the pack. He's
Here is something, though, and I've personally bet this. Their probability of winning the AFC South. So, like, I've got, and now currently I think on Bet Online, it's like plus 450. I don't think I'd do that, actually. Maybe I would. There's still some value there, I think. But, like, the Titans are in this weird place where I have simultaneously bet their under win total and them to win the AFC South, because there is this sort of mismatch in the betting markets right now. Indianapolis is even money basically, or minus 110 to win the AFC South. And so what's that's doing, that's piling a lot of probability onto those other teams. And I get with Houston, they have the toughest schedule in the NFL, but like the reason we like Tennessee's under is not because we think they're going to go 4-12. It's because we think they're going to go 6-10, 7-9, and all these other teams are going to be better than them. But if that's not if that's not fulfilled, like if Indy has a quarterback injury or Houston, hits the skids, or Jacksonville does what they do, like Tennessee could very well win that division at 9-7, and like and so I like them. I weirdly like those two simultaneously, even though they're complete opposites.
Yeah, you also stay up till midnight to bet WNBA, but that's neither here nor there. I for one, think that's a very shrewd bet on your part, and I may or may not have invested similarly.
Should we talk about week one?
Let's do it quickly.
Okay, so week 1, Tennessee goes to Cleveland. When I prepped for this, it was Cleveland was -5 with
when
a
we
total
did the video for it that has not yet been released.
Total of 45.5. 5 seems like a lot, doesn't it?
5 seems like a lot. So this is another simultaneous thing. I am on the under overall, but I think the value in week 1 is certainly there. 5 is a lot. If we look at just using our basic ELO power ranking, it's more of a 3-point game, and I agree with that. The public is very down on the Titans and Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota was a guy who was 10th in terms of accuracy throwing to open receivers. He's not Blaine Gabbert. So to me, this is the opportunity, if you don't want to wait till the end of the season, to invest a little bit in the Titans. I also think the Browns, I almost called them the Cavs, which didn't want to do, but the Browns are a great I don't want this to come off the wrong way, but they're a team that could certainly come out the gates thinking they've already won 9 games. 10 games.
100%.
And then all of a sudden at halftime realize that they're down 10.
Yeah.
And be like, all right, we got to eke this one out. So I am bullish on the Browns overall going forward, past in future seasons, and think that the Titans have
There's
value.
a good example of this. So like Seattle, when they were starting to get good with the Legion of Boom, there were, I think, either consecutive seasons or maybe just like one season where they opened on the road against Carolina, who's a far inferior team, and they had to eke out like a 2 or 3 4-point win. I think that's exactly this, right? I think a team that like they believe their own hype, all this kind of stuff. They come out of the gates a little flat. Tennessee, right? There's a lot of new things going on, so they're trying to prove themselves almost right away with the offensive coordinator and Mariota and Humphreys and AJ Brown and everything. And then they give them a game. Now, what do you, just briefly on the total, 45.5, a little high, a little low?
I hate to bring wind into it.
Ooh.
But I don't know.
So Browns kickers always give you some concern, right? And so with totals, it's always an issue.
I just have a personal problem. Like, it's very hard for me to bet on an under.
Yeah.
In general.
It is. It is one of what you hate to do.
Yes. You hate to see it. So I think I would go over.
Yeah. And I think early in the season, so it's weird, but like, and maybe
we saw this last year, right?
Maybe it's just from last year, but early in the season when the weather's relatively good and rules are sort of slanted towards offense, you always sort of think about an over, and that's where kind of our numbers are. I'm not going to release them yet, but that's kind of where we're sitting there. So,
that's the Titans. Anything else that you have for the Tennessee Titans? Nashville is a great place to go visit. If you have not visited Nashville and your team is playing the Titans this year, I recommend heading to Nashville. Great food, one of the best food cities out there. Whether it's cheap food, like their hot chicken, if you're into spicy stuff, you've got to go check it out. If you're into fine dining, they also have great places. There's a place called Husk there that I've been to 3 times now, and it is awesome. They get steak from this like tiny little farm in the middle of nowhere, and it's ridiculous. Speaking of Nashville, stories from the YMCA. I was in the locker room the other day.
Oh no!
And that's how all great stories start. And I was actually kind of in a hurry because I was trying to get back for our Friday meeting on time, and I was on pace to be early. Usually I'm like on the minute, I'm there. And so I'm pumped up about myself because I'm going to be early. And some guy, of course, is like, hey, man, you're on the PFF podcast? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And he's like, oh, nice, man. We're on our way down from Cleveland. We're headed to Nashville.
Famous.
We love your stories about this place. We were stopping here for a night. We figured we'd come check it out. I think if I remember correctly, the guy's name was Levi, and I think his buddy's name was Tevin. I'm probably getting that wrong, mixed up with someone else. I'm terrible with names, but Levi is an easy one to remember. They were both...
Talk about some Northern Ohio names.
Right? Both awesome guys. In fact, we talked about how there were two dudes drinking coffee the whole time we were working out. And the guy's like, I couldn't figure it out. I didn't understand why they were just sort of like drinking coffee and not working out. So shout out to those guys. If you're in the area, I recommend the Cincy YMCA. It is a great place to work out. Here's my story from the Y. It actually happened this morning. So some people like to mix up their, set of whatever they're doing, right? So they'll do exercise A, go to exercise B, maybe exercise C, and then, kind of circle back, a little rotation, right? Which I have no problem with. Do whatever you got to do. What I have a problem with is a rotation that takes you literally around the block and then 20 minutes later back to where you started, to the point where no one could in any way conceive that you'd possibly be back at where you started. So this happened to me 3 times today. I'm trying to get some abs in at the end of my workout, and guy just keeps like circling back. He literally like leaves the room, comes back in, moves all the settings around. And there's only one GHD machine at the Y, which is infinitely more than 0, so that matters. So yeah, don't be that guy. You never do that, in fairness to you.
No, I'm a pretty get in and get out kind of guy at the gym.
I also saw Gronk at the gym.
Like retired, like retired.
No, like
15
dude
years
with
later.
an injury on every appendage, like body armor. He had 2 knee sleeves. They were totally different knee sleeves. Like one was like blue, the other was black and had like a strap. Best part about this guy is he hadn't come close to breaking a sweat. And he's taking like 5-minute phone breaks in between, some set of I was doing like tricep extensions or something or whatever. He needs, knee sleeves for all this stuff. And then he decides he like kneels down and he's doing some weird pull over the head thing. And I literally was about to ask him if he wore knee pads for this exercise or not, but I resisted.
My favorite are the people that have the knee sleeves, but when they work out, they're on like the ankles. So they let them like lay down.
Yeah.
So like you think like, oh, that person just got done playing basketball or doing something strenuous, but they're just often for show.
I do agree with that. I will say that I think sometimes people try not to use them until they get up to a heavier weight, which I also have a problem with, but at least they're using them in some way, shape, or form. Those are the stories from the Cincy YMCA. Despite them, great place. Check it out if you're in town. Head to ProFootballFocus.com. We've got a Kirk Cousins article up there. We've got week 1 games.
A preview, yeah.
They're coming soon.
Coming soon.
Next week, I think you'll start to see them up. Putting a lot of work into them, so hopefully you'll enjoy them. If you have any hatred, you know where to go. YouTube.com or PFF_Eric. Peace out.